what we'll do is I'll start with sharing, let's discuss the actual case study and then we'll get to the file later. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. So I'm guessing all of you have now been through the whole thing, right? So you've all seen the case study.
Yes.
Okay. So just to break the case study and the expectations down, because I know yesterday was a bit overwhelming. I was jumping from breakout room to breakout room as well. So I understand that it might have seemed a little confusing. So I'm just going to go over it again. Every week in a case study, you'll be given a challenge question, and you have to write an essay in response to this challenge question. Okay. The essay should not be more than 750 words. It can be around 500, 600 words. That's fine. The point is not to fixate too much on the word count. It's to try and answer this question to the best that you all can. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through a little bit of methodology that you can use to approach how to answer a question like this. So let's take this up. How did biorespecting shape the economic, political, and social dimensions of early modern global encounters? Now, this is not a term I was familiar with before reading the case study either. So don't feel that you needed any knowledge of this before you read it. We don't need that. The point is to use the information in the study to come up with a response to this question. So we're only using the information available to us over here. Okay. Now, I'm going to make this slightly interactive. So you guys will have to unmute yourselves and jump in. But um, what do you think forget about the primary sources for a second. What do you think the first thing we need to do would be for to answer this question?
Think about what the people thought during those periods if I was in their shoes, discovering a new thing or finding a new type of stuff. What would be my reaction? How would I just approach it?
Yeah, that's a really good way of starting to think about it is, and it's a big part of being a historian is empathy, right? We want to put ourselves in the shoes of another of the people who lived through these experiences. So absolutely, that is something I would want you to do throughout the case study and also in everything that you're going to be studying. But let's talk a little bit about in terms of actually as an essay answering this question. Let's break the question down a bit, and this will give you a rough idea. Mustafizur, you can take notes on this also, of how to outline an essay. Okay, so what are the components of the essay that we want? What is it? We want you to have an answer, right? We want you to, if I've asked you, how did biorespecting shape this? I want each of you to be able to say, this is how it shaped it, or this is how we think it shaped it. This is our argument. So, for an outline, the very first thing that I would suggest you all look at would be, what is biorespecting? Right? So always assume that your audience, whoever's going to read the essay, you're actually going to have people working on the essay who reading your essay in the gallery who've not done this case study. So students from other parts of the world, some of them are doing track A, some of them are doing track C, not all of them are doing track B like you. So if they come and land on your essay and open it, they shouldn't be like, oh my God, what is this? So you want to give the very first thing, and again, going back to what we discussed with narrative mapping, is context, right? Let's define our terms a little bit. So I would suggest that somewhere early on in your essay, ideally in the beginning, you want to say what biorespecting is in one or two sentences. Okay, doesn't have to be very long. Keep it simple. The case study introduction becomes a great resource for you to define this because they've actually laid it out here, right? You can see it over here. So they've said biorespecting is a new term, but for what is actually an old practice. What do they mean by that? someone answered that? Sam, you want to go for that? What do you think they mean by what is meant by biorespect?
By saying it's an old practice which has a new term, I think it meant that although it has been continued throughout the generation, but no one has been able to give it a label till now to
Absolutely.
find
Yeah.
something that accurately describes it. So that's what it means.
It's a fantastic way of putting it. I would put something like that in your essay. So you guys can actually say that. So yes, they've also said it here, but I like the way you worded that it's a label for something that's been happening for centuries, right? And what is biorespecting? It is the extraction of lucrative resources from developing countries. Ideally, I don't want you to pick up exact words from here. You need to rephrase, because if you just start picking up full sentences, that's going to be plagiarism, right? We don't want to copy what someone else has written. We want to reword it, say it in our own words. So upfront for your essay outline, you want to begin by kind of explaining what you think biorespecting is. Okay. And you can bring in, Sam, you can bring in your point about that it's something that's been happening for a long period of time, but didn't have a label earlier. And now we've given it this label of biorespecting. Is that clear? Is that do you all agree? Is that a nice way to maybe begin the essay?
Yes.
Guys, unmute and say yes. Not just Mustafizur. I don't. Oh, Sadman's also come. Okay, great. Right. Okay, so most of you are on the call now. So we were just talking about how to begin the essay. So you always want to start by defining something that is important to the question, but that your audience, your reader may not know. So you want to make sure they have the same amount of information you do. So I would begin with explaining this. And then what do we think? What should come next in an essay? What are the components of a good essay? What do you think? How would we go about answering a question like this? So I don't want the specifics of actual biorespecting. Tell me in general terms. Essays begin with an introduction, right? There are things that go into an introduction. What else comes? What would be next? Sadman, you just joined. We're just discussing the outline for the essay. But if you have any thoughts on what are components of an essay that are important?
After the intro, the main body.
And what would be in the main body?
Answering the question, like for this one, for this essay, like we have to answer how does bioprospecting shape our economical and political dimensions, like in different paras, and we can address the economical, political, and social dimensions in each para, and then come to our conclusion.
Yeah, I like that. So that's a really good way of, so you're breaking the question down, right? So every question is going to look a little different, but that's a good possible approach is we take economic, political, and social, and that gives you a structure for the essay. You don't have to do it like that, but it would be a nice way of doing it. You could also just maybe pick up economic and political. You don't have time to really go into social if you don't have enough space. So it's up to you how you want to tackle the question. So but a good way of doing it is, yeah, you could pick up economic in one, political in one, social in one. But there's a word limit of 750 words, which is why, and you cannot exceed that. So it can be less than that. It doesn't have to be 750. It can be 500-600 also, but don't go over 750. Okay, that's your maximum. But what really forms the body of an essay? Sadman, you've said it, but you haven't said in these words. So I'm just going to repackage what you've said. Is we have an argument, right? You're going to make some kind of argument in your essay. And the argument is the response to the question. And typically your argument you will lay out in one sentence in your introduction. So in your introductory para, you want to give people a sense of a teaser for what you're going to be saying in your essay. So you talk about biorespecting. You might say that, yes, it's an old practice that's now got this label. What does it mean? And what are you arguing really? Are you saying, yes, it really did shape, and it shaped it in fundamental ways? It shaped it in a really significant way. You can say that, that becomes a teaser for your argument. And then the body of your essay, exactly what Sadhman said, is you giving evidence to support that argument, right? We want the body of the essay. Think of it. I mean, a lot of you are, I think, from different science departments in BRAC as well. So you have a hypothesis in an experiment, and then you run the experiment, and you take evidence from your experiment to prove that hypothesis. Approach your history papers in a similar way. It's just that we're not going to be able to test and run experiments in the way you would in the sciences, but you would use evidence that has been given to you to try and back up your argument. So if you're making an argument about something about the economic dimensions, so for example, in our case, and you've all read the case study now, in our case, we could pick up an example like coffee, right? We've talked about coffee, you all read about coffee also this week. Imagine now we pick up coffee and we say biorespecting really shaped the way economic dimensions of the early modern world. And let's look at the example of coffee. And you, I think somewhere down, you have a primary source here, right? You have primary source number 5, which actually depicts a South Asian man drinking coffee, a Chinese person drinking tea, and I think you have someone from an indigenous American drinking hot chocolate, what we now call hot chocolate. And these 3 people are here. Now use this, you have this great source to weave into your argument about the economic dimensions. So I would prefer you do the structure the way Sadhman said, of picking up the dimensions. Don't go one para on source A, on source 1, one paragraph on source 2, one on source 3. That's less interesting. What we want to do is use the sources as evidence for our argument. The source can't be the argument. Does that make sense? Are you following what I'm saying here?
Yes, yes, very.
Yeah. Sadhman, do you agree with that?
Uh, for answering the challenge question, do you have to for example, like I read about the primary source 1. In that, do you have to explain about the economical dimensions that it challenges, the economical dimensions that it touches on, like for primary source 1 and then for primary source 2? Like, do you have to do it like that?
You don't need to. Those can be your notes. So you make the notes. When you're reading the source, you say, oh, this is touching on this economic dimension. So, okay, this is a good point. But the way you write it doesn't have to be primary source 1 said this, primary source 2 said this, 3 said this. What I would do is, if you all have taken notes in this way, collate, Mustafizur, you would maybe pick up and collate everyone's point, any point that's been made in the notes about economic dimension, and club those into the economic dimension paragraph. Whether it's from primary source 5 or 2 or 1, it doesn't matter. You would refer to them those. So you'd say, so give me an example of something you guys learned tell me something about the economic dimension from one of the sources. Let's work through an example together.
In primary source 5, I hope we learned the coffee and the economic background. We can merge it with our essay in economic part, and other part like social part and social background in other. I hope.
Okay, you can, but
And-
what is the point? What I'm trying to get to is, what do you think? Okay, when you looked at this, What are the notes you're making? What does this primary source tell you? What are the notes you guys made about the source?
Sarika, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do we divide the work?
It's up to you. It's you, the editor for the week, and you as a team need to decide how to divide it. You can divide it by paragraph, you can divide it by source, you can all make your notes about all the sources, and then the editor can use them to make the essay. It's really up to you. We as the instructors are not going to say this is the way you should divide it. I can give you advice, but yeah, go ahead.
We can divide this primary sources, and last we can make a draft with all parts and merge it.
Yeah, you can merge it exactly. So that is, I would suggest doing that. You can divide the sources. So say Mustafizur, you take source 5, Sadman takes source 4. And by the way, you don't have to do all 5 sources. I want you to use a minimum of 3. You're welcome to use more, but you have to use just 3. You don't have to use more than 3. Okay. So start off with 3. I would divide it. And Rivia, what I would say is always go back to the question. So if you're looking at the source, there are 2 things I want you to look at when you're making your notes. One, look at how is this source maybe helping me answer this question? How is it connecting to the economic, the political, and the social in connection with biorespecting, right? And the second thing I would tell you to focus on is under each source, you'll notice this thing called compass points. You don't have to use these, but these are what the instructors have put down as little ideas for you, maybe things that can help you come up with a better response to the question. Okay, so I'll give you, Mustafizur, I'll give an example with what you said about coffee. So let's take primary source 5 together, all of us, okay? So you all can see it, right? So
Yeah.
primary source 5, you don't need to know exactly what the title means, but look at the background. So let's read it together. It says, with the rise of global trade and the spread of botanical knowledge, plants like cacao is basically what chocolate is made out of. It's the cacao bean, tea, and coffee were turned into popular caffeinated drinks that were widely available in coffee houses and apothecary shops across Europe. Apothecaries were basically early pharmacies, right? They were like places that people would go and they would buy their medicines, herbs, things like that from. This image comes from an influential work by a French merchant who wanted to promote exotic caffeinated beverages from different parts of the world. Okay, this has given us quite a lot of information. So the first thing I would do is I would say origin. Who is the author of the source? So who's the author of the source?
Mm,
Who's made this? Whose
yes.
work are we looking at?
Doc, Phil-
Yeah, so
Philip,
it's Philippe Dufour. Yeah. And Philippe was, who was he? What other information has the source given us?
a French merchant who wanted to promote exotica.
Exactly. So we're talking, this is actually a French source, right? So we automatically think again to narrative mapping. We're situating, this is the where. So we've got the who, we've got the where. The where is France, the who is Philippe Dufour. Got it? Everyone's on the, so we've already extracted this information, right? Now, what else are we learning from this? So this is the image. What else can we learn from just this information? Don't look at the image, just the background. What else is it telling us?
In this time,
Seham,
in this time,
yeah,
the
go ahead.
rise of global trade by promoting coffee in European pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. So it is telling us that trade has increased globally, and with the increase in trade and more knowledge, more botanical knowledge, right? So more knowledge about plants, things like cocoa, tea, coffee are becoming more what is it telling us? What's happening with these plants?
Becoming more popular, caffeinated drinks.
Yes. And they're becoming popular for what? For popular consumption, right?
Right.
It's not just medicines anymore. We're talking about drinks being in coffee houses. So you're seeing the rise of the cafe. For the first time, you're seeing cafes popping up, and cafes are serving these. So, Mustafizur, going back to what you said in the beginning, that you would use this source for economic, that's absolutely valid. But can we also use it for something else? Let's go back to the question. Which other dimension is this
Uh,
intersecting with?
Other primary sources,
No, this primary source, we said it in, we can use it for the economic dimension, right? But we can also,
social
what are
dimension.
yes, absolutely. It's a social dimension as well, because you're seeing three people from different parts of the world sitting around a table. So, what is the source telling us? That there's also these plants, these commodities now are bringing people together in social settings for the first time. So, you're seeing people from different parts of the world drinking products that have been created from different parts of the world, right? So that becomes a point. That can be a single point that you make in your essay. The point would not be, oh, primary source says this. The point you would make would be something like what I just said, that um, commodities like coffee, so plants like cacao, tea, and coffee, because of global trade and because of the demand for caffeinated drinks for the first time, so for these products, led to these products being consumed in social settings like coffee houses. And as a result, you can link how that shaped early modern encounters, because coffee is bringing people together. So, coffee is bringing people from different walks of life together in the same social setting, right? And then when you make that point, you'll say, I would say, where are you getting this point from? Like, where's your evidence, right? You've made an argument now. So at that point, you would add a few sentences saying, as seen in primary source 5, and you would put a little description of what primary source 5 is. So you would say it's a work by Philippe Dufour, a French merchant, and that was primary source 5, and that shows an interesting depiction, visual depiction of three people, and you can describe the image. But see how you're then using the source to support a point you're making. Do you all understand? Is that making sense?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Clear?
So, Tarika,
Yeah, go ahead.
then we have to match every primary source with economic, political, and social dimensions.
You don't have to, and they all won't match, but it's a good way for you to. So if you're making a point, if one of the points you're making in the paragraph is um, the economic and social dimensions were transformed by biorespecting, that it brought people together, then I would suggest that you look at which sources connect as proof for that. So really think of it as argument and evidence. And when you're reading the sources, Rubeya, you can actually go through the sources and make your own notes. No one's going to see them. You're making them for yourself. You can share them with your team of saying, oh, I think primary source 5 really works well for economic and social, and this is why. Don't just say it works well for it. Give the input of why it works well. What is it about the source? What is the source really telling us? Okay, and you might find actually when you go through that some are not really connecting. Maybe you don't want to use that source, don't use it. You might find that not just primary source 5, but let's go to primary source 4. Primary source 4 is a drawing of cacao. Maybe there's a way that you can use that in the same points. You can say primary source 3 and 5 show us that, whatever you want to say. So with everything that you put on the first mention of the source, explain a little bit of what the source is, but don't assume that, oh, I've said what the source is, so now they know what the source means. Connect it to your argument. Okay. So ask yourself, how is this connecting to the question I'm trying to answer? Is it moving the argument forward in any way?
Yeah.
Does that help answer what you were saying? Yeah, I can't hear Rubiya anymore.
Yes.
So break your work down. Mustafizur, if I was you, and I think Sadman, you're the editor. You both are editors, right? Together.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Divide the work. Pick 3 sources. Okay. And divide the work with the team and assign it today. And we can say, okay, Seham does this. You're looking at primary source 3 and tell us where it's intersecting with economic, social, political. Okay. And then say Rubiya does primary source 4. Where is it intersecting? And then Mustafizur and Sadman, you both sit together and virtually or however you want to do this, and look at all the points everyone's come up with, and you'll find actually that maybe one person has made the same point in 2 different places. Combine those, that becomes a paragraph for you. So I would suggest you all put your points in the Google draft, the shared Google Doc you have, so that you all can see what the points are. And then you make the link and say, okay, this can become paragraph 2. We'll add 1 sentence to make it sound better. Or maybe, the source has not been explained here. Let's write who wrote the source, when was it written, why is it relevant? And then that becomes a paragraph. There's no fixed template. That's the reason I'm not giving you a template, because there really isn't a template with history writing. The only template I would tell you is in your introduction, make sure that you explain any new term that's being asked. So in this case, it's biorespecting. Make sure that you are explaining that to the reader, and make sure after that that you're giving us some argument, some kind of answer to this question. So if in a simplistic way, to give you an example, if I was asked this question, I could potentially give an answer that said something like, so Mustafizur, if you ask me, how did biorespecting shape the economic, political, and social dimensions of early modern global encounters? How? What ways did it shape it? One of the things I could say is biorespecting enabled people from different parts of the world to consume commodities that were not accessible to them earlier, right? So as a result of being able to consume those commodities, it drew closer economic ties because it increased trade between different parts of the world. It also maybe increased social ties. So you might have a situation where, in different port cities, you guys learned a little bit about port cities, right? The new merchant cities that had cropped up all over the world. And especially even in the Indian Ocean, you have them surfacing. So in those port cities, you might have an inn, you might have a coffee house where you have an Arab merchant sitting with a Chinese merchant as well. You might have a Portuguese explorer sitting there, and they're all sitting and drinking coffee. So what is coffee doing? Coffee becomes a way to bring people together. Making sense? So then that becomes an part of an answer. So that's one way to answer the question. So in that scenario, that would be the argument. So you're saying, oh, my argument. So guys, in our essay, let's say that we're going to argue that biorespecting actually brought the world together. It brought the world closer in some ways, right? Then I might turn around and say, okay, it brought the world closer, but it was also a very exploitative thing, right? How are these resources being mined? There was slavery involved. There were a lot of other things involved. So what did it do? In some ways, it brought people closer. In some ways, as Jeremy said in the lecture, it also created inequalities. It made inequalities greater in societies. So different arguments, use the sources, try and link them. Don't feel like, oh, I need a very long answer to this, or I have to get into it in a lot of detail. We want to see your analysis. So, what are the ideas you have? Put those down and feel comfortable and safe sharing that. Okay. There's no wrong answer. I just want to see that you're able to support your statements with evidence. So use the sources for that. Helping?
Yes.
A little bit of clarity,
Yeah, understood. Very clear.
feeling better about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. For every source, we want all of you, and Mustafa, just write this, and I'll bring it up again every week. We'll go over it. For every source, and I think Rubaya, you were asking, what do we then do for each source? A good method is think of the narrative mapping, ask the same questions for the source. Who or what is the source? Who wrote it? What's the origin of the source? Right? When? Try and place it in time. So usually you'll have some kind of time frame being given, because the time will matter sometimes. It'll matter more. Sometimes it won't matter as much. But we know then, okay, this is written in the 17th century. This is not written in the 20th century. Okay. So the when, and then why is it important for your question? What is the source telling you that can help you with evidence for your answer to the question? So link it up like that. So that's the value. What is the origin? What's the purpose of the source? What's the value? And what are the limitations? So that's a good analytical framework to follow for every source: origin, purpose, value, limitation. And you don't need a long answer for that. But if you're getting assigned a source for your team, make sure you've answered that question, all four of those things, for the editors to see. So it'll make their life easier when they're putting the essay together. Okay.
Okay.
Now, finally, I will, you had mentioned that you've changed the,
Yeah. We changed.
is it in this document or no?
No, I can share it, or we can
Yeah.
write.
Yeah. Why don't you share it and I'll take a look and give you a little bit of feedback on that.
I can.
So normally this is, I wouldn't, after the team meeting, you all would go off and do it and submit it on Friday. I wouldn't see it. Okay. But this is the first week. So I want you all to start feeling comfortable. But eventually you're going to be submitting it yourself. Okay. So, and Mustafiju, don't feel like you need to make another draft. I'm not looking at that drive. That drive is actually for all of you. So don't feel ki, oh, I've put it in the drive, so now I'm being assessed on that. That is a draft drive. It's meant for you to, all of you to use. Okay. I'm not actually going to look at it at all. So use that, just use that paper only, that document itself. Okay. You've written a lot. You guys have already
Yes.
written stuff.
Yes. We can divide our parts. Part one, Satman. Part two, Tausid, especially part three. So, Shiham.
You've already done all the work, but
Part
you,
four, and also last three marks and cunning those ideas. And the final part, final word. Is it? I hope it's 650 words. 600.
No, so all of this is looking quite long to me. I don't
Yeah.
think
Like,
this is.
no, but actually for my part, like I was actually clueless. So I like my write-up is not actually
That's okay.
going,
It's okay because
going with
it's
the
not the
question.
final thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this
But
is
today I
you
understood.
guys
Like,
Can
you
you
guys have written 3,000 words.
and
yeah, we didn't know about what even.
Okay, that's fine. Honestly, it's not a bad thing, just that now you all have to condense it. So it looks like you have everything there. But I would now what I would do is follow a little bit of the outline framework that I gave you. And Sadman and Mustafizur, you both sit because it seems like everyone else has done their bit. So you both need to now together come up with a 700, 750 word draft of this, combining the points to make it seem like a coherent essay. Because these
uh,
are everyone's individual, right?
there are any para because there are para past economical then also social and something like that. Then conclusion.
It's up to you. It's absolutely up to you how you want to do it. So if you've done intro, social, economic, social, political, that's absolutely fine. But I want you to keep in mind that, okay, so let me take a look at what you've written actually. Perfect. You've defined it. That's okay. So this is great. I wouldn't really change much. I would just, obviously like you've started off well. Connection between European powers and other natural assets also had it. That's fine.
Also, we
In the
see the
modern
Hans
economy.
Solanus research of Coca.
That's great. So if you're using any of the primary sources, I want you to put a citation for them. I
Yeah,
don't know if you've already
we
done.
did it. We
You
add.
did. Okay, perfect. Yeah. I don't know why you all were panicking so much yesterday. You've already done it. You've written 5 essays here. No, this looks very good. Yeah, I would just now sit and make sure that the team is happy with all the ideas that are in there. So, have you left out something that someone really wanted in there? So, in the draft, in the Google Drive, upload what you think is the final 750 version, and then let the team come back with feedback. And if you all are happy with it, then on Friday you can upload it.
We can try our best.
You've more than tried your best. It's looking very good. I don't know why I wasted so much time explaining everything to you. You all have done it already. So you've done a good job. Mustafizur, just I know these are rough notes. Just make sure that your capitalizations of things, spellings, all of that. So just do a copy edit check
As
on
like
everything
this.
once. Yeah. Just for the final version, just make sure that it's looking fine. And yeah, I think this is looking really good. I'm really proud of all of you for managing to do this in only not even one day. So um yeah, great job. I just make sure that you're ideally stick to referring to the sources that are available to you and try and do a little. So I think it'll make it hard for the editors if you have too much written materials. So from next week onwards, plan in a way. And honestly, in 1 or 2 weeks, the more you do it, you guys will be doing it like that. It'll be very easy because
Yeah.
you'll know exactly how you structure. So this is the first week. Imagine by week 9 how you'll feel about it. You'll be doing case studies in within minutes.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't stress too much.
We will have a case study every week, Sarika.
We'll have a case study every week. Yeah. There'll be one break week. I think after week 6, there's a break for one
Yeah,
week
me too.
and then the case. Sorry?
I said when our midterm, is there any break? Midterm
Is there any
exam
break
in our
for the
university.
midterms? When is your what is your schedule?
Like November, but not actually sure. Could be
Okay.
the mid-November or something.
Okay, why don't you guys on the WhatsApp group, if you can share your breaks and holidays with me, so I can make sure, if it's falling on a Monday or Tuesday, then we'll have to move classes around.
Yeah.
So just send that after.
Haven't been published yet, actually. I
Okay,
think.
so whenever you have them, can I leave it to you all to just make sure you tell me on WhatsApp so we know? Just
Yeah,
put it
sure.
on the general group so that everyone can see it.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, and come up with a team name if you can, so that when you're publishing, you have a nice team name to go with the amazing essay you're going to put up. So because you can't call yourselves team two. So,
We
Yeah.
choose
yeah, and
annual suggest
when you, what is it?
annual suggest a good name.
No, I can't suggest. You all have to come up with that yourselves. You have to come up with a nice, fun name that reflects what you all want to show, because this is what the rest of the world will see. And also go ahead, Siham. Thank you. Mustafijo, just make sure that when you guys upload it, you put down the name of your team, the section, which is you'll write BRAC University, and just put the date and the case study name. So somewhere on the top of
Name
the page, just
once again, if
team name, your section name, which will be BRAC, and then the case study number.
okay.
And then make sure, obviously, that the challenge question is on top so that anyone reading it knows. So write track B and then the question. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but you've done wonderful progress. I mean, I think you and Sadman have a bit of a challenge to now pick and choose and make it shorter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that'll be a challenge now, but it's a good place to be because you have a lot of information to work with. Okay.
Yeah.
Make sure it's well rounded. So, just when you're reading it, because you have so much material, make sure that you're actually saying something interesting and that you're not being repetitive because you don't have that many words to play with. All right. Any other questions? Anything else you want to clarify?
No.
Okay,
Yes.
sounds good. I'm very impressed and very, very proud of what you've all put together. So you should feel very happy and confident. For week one, I'm really impressed with what you all have done. So yeah, it's up to you. If you don't want to put it up on the gallery, you don't have to, but I think it's looking pretty good. So I would be very happy if you shared your work with everybody this week. Okay.
Okay.
Great job, everyone. And I will see you all now on Monday. And of course, if you have any trouble with the gallery link or anything, just message on the WhatsApp group, and I'll try and sort it out. Okay.
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 Okay. Great. Have a nice rest of the week, and I'll see you all on Monday.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
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 That's